Hello everyone, welcome back. The topic which we're going to see is about disaster management, a main focus on floods. Definition, we have already seen it. We'll move to the next topic. So, disaster management, flood. Flood is usually a rain, heavy thunderstorm, or thawing of snow, which is considered as a temporary condition by two or more acres or dry land either. So, it's overflow within the inlands or tidal water or rapid or runoff of surface waters and mud flow. What are the causes of flood? You have two causes. One is natural, second is man-made. So natural, you have obviously the rainfall, the river water overflow, cyclones, storms, melting of glaciers and dam breaks. When you come to man-made, we obviously know deforestation, poor drainage system, unplanned urbanization, and encroachments of river banks. So types of floods. So here you can see some image of floods. You have the river floods, flash floods, urban floods, coastal floods, and dam failure floods. So according to the geographical area, there are around 12% of the flood prone areas and 30 to 1 out of that 80 percentage they are protectable and 45 percentage they are already protected. So an average of 7.7% are flood affected area and the maximum happened in 1978, that's around 17.5 percentage, and the minimum of 1.5 in the year 1965. So these are some flood prone areas where other states, and it include different states which are of major flood. We have Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Assam, West Bengal and Orissa, and other states they form about around 43.9 percentage. So what are the causes or the vulnerability causes? First is the indiscriminate encroachment, increase in economic development activities in the floodplains, lack of regulations, inadequate drainage systems and maintenance, and lack of disaster preparedness. So what are the approaches and strategies for flood management? So when you come to approaches, so obviously floods cannot be controlled. It can only be managed to reduce floods. So what are the strategies? One, we can modify the floods, modify the susceptibility to flood damage, modify the loss burden, and bear the loss. So these are the things which can be considered as strategies. So different organizations which are involved in the flood management, you have the State Flood Control Department, Central Water Commission, Ganga Flood Control Mission, Brahmaputra Board, the MHA and NDM division. So measures for flood management. First is the structural measures where you have physical works to keep flood away from people. Non-structural measures, they are planned activity to modify the susceptibility to flood damage. So flood management, you have the structural measures where we have dams, reservoirs which can control the water flow, then embankment, channel improvement, river diversion, interbasin transfer, and anti-erosion works. Coming to non-structural measures, what can be done? The forecasting and warning, floodplain zoning, flood fighting, flood proofing, insurance, relief and rehabilitation. So here is how you plan a floodplain zoning where you have a water channel which is classified and the other areas which are surrounded can be planned according to the water flow where it will not affect the other environment. So here is the one where part 3 is the prohibited one where the river channel is present where no construction should be done. Second is restrictive, where there are chances of water flow that can be protected. Third is the first zone, where the warning is there. There will be construction under strict regulations. Forecasting. How do you forecast your flood? So it was first started by the Central Water Commission in the year 1958 in the river Yamuna. So flood forecasting and warning, what are the steps to be done? First is the data collection, data transmission, analytics of data, forecast formulation, and finally the forecast is disseminated. First is data collection. So data collection is hydrological, the water levels. You see the water level and the river discharge. Second is hydrometeorological, where you identify the rainfall, snow and hail. How is the data being transferred? We have the wireless one, the telephone or fax, satellite, telegraph or telex. So forecasting, you have the civil authority which identifies what are the problems, then it's transferred to other agencies, and the same civil authorities give it to the press and also other local representatives and users to do the prevention methods. So this is the flood forecasting and warning system, where you have the control rooms which get the information, and then it is transferred to different areas to overcome the problems which are going to happen due to flood. So new directions for the disaster management in India, specifically of cyclone. So here the fund will be administered by the NDMA, that is National Disaster Mitigation. So states will be getting the administered fund. Then through the National Executive Committee, they'll have the disaster response fund and the disaster response fund respectively. So you'll have the 8 battalions of National Disaster Response Force. They are trained and they are deployed for the strategic locations. So you have the policies and the National Disaster Response Plan, which will be drawn up based on the requirement. So what are the scopes for flood management? So we can use this remote sensing and GIS, research and development for flood management, weather and rainfall forecasting, the FF modeling, capacity building, and use international cooperation for flood management. So what are the future strategies? So to avoid floods or to overcome floods, we can have a focused approach, basin-wise action plan, floodplain zoning. You can have the role of the government. You can get funding for planned flood management work and adequacy of flood cushion in reservoirs. Encourage and consolidate knowledge networks, mobilize the trained disaster volunteers for effective preparedness. You can also be prepared with the local people like NSS, NCC Scout Guides, and Civil Defense and Home Guards. Then increase the capacity building, which leads to faster vulnerability reduction, and learn from the best practices of the disaster. Be prepared for mitigation and then the disaster. Thank you for your attention.